exploration basics logbooks and what is contained in the logbook and the filing of a float plan. Well, as everybody knows, if you bottom fish offshore, it's all about numbers. And so the intent on my talk is to help you find those numbers and also how to maintain them so that you can access them later on when you want to fish them. So numbers are pretty important. So let's talk about some of the exploration basics. These are things that you're going to want to do to compile a logbook like this. This is my logbook, and it's got 9 years worth of data in there. For me, I'm kind of anal, so I make a lot of annotations on the numbers that I have and things like that, and I constantly go back to this logbook. And it's all through exploration, finding new numbers and just reporting them and keeping track of the data. So, the first thing I'd like to say is every trip, you should allot some of your time to looking for new numbers. I think that's pretty important. It's fun to just go out and slay the fish, and oftentimes I hear people just return it back to the dock. I can't do that. I always have to break off a little bit and go look for new numbers or check out some previous numbers I found. So the thing that I'll do to do that when I'm finished fishing them in a look is if I'm going to go to a spot I was at before, if I've traveled that way before, I'll go off on a different heading and kind of roundabout go to that area, and you're covering new ground, and hopefully you're going to stumble upon something. And when you do that, the best time of the day to do that is midday. And the reason for that is because the sun is up high, you can put that sun behind you so it's not giving you some glare, you're moving forward, you've got your bottom finder on, which is key to finding these spots. Some of the things that you're looking for when you're running are those dark patches. You're going to see in the late spring and early summer, actually in the early spring and up to early summer, the visibility is pretty good. And you can see those dark patches. And when you're running, you should be either trolling over those if you happen to be trolling and you're looking for new spots, or you're running over those and you're watching your bottom finder. As I mentioned, the bottom finder is key. That bottom finder is on. You're looking for changes of relief when you're moving along. It's pretty much steady, but at some point you're going to come across where the bottom finder is jumping up or jumping down. And I'll turn around and I'll go back over there and I'll just hit that waypoint save. And if it looks interesting enough, I'll fish it. Or I just make an annotation in my logbook that there's hard bottom, and I'll put a short description. And the next time I'm in that area, I'll return to look at that. Something else that you want to look for when you're doing your exploration are sea turtles. Pretty much sea turtles, if they're not traveling, pretty much sea turtles like hard bottom. They feed there, they eat sponges. If it's complicated enough, they will go down there and they kind of wedge themselves in. If it's complicated, meaning it's like surge channel or just good rock, they wedge themselves in there, and oftentimes you see them sleeping. So turtles are a good idea to keep a lookout for. Bait and kudas. Now, when the bait's coming from moving through the water, moving through the area rather, oftentimes they're just moving, but sometimes if you are in an area and the bait is repeatedly in a certain spot, there's probably a good reason for that, because there's hard bottom and they like to be associated with hard bottom. Kudas do the same thing. If you've ever gone to the Whistle Buoy or the White City Bridge, the kudas are there in the summertime, and they're there because of the bait. And the point is that if you're ever moving around and you see kudas at the surface, probably a good indication that there's some good structure in the bottom. And then the last thing would be to keep good numbers, keep good records. That's going to be key to future fishing. So my thoughts on a logbook like this is that a logbook is like a snapshot. You can return to that snapshot. You can recall where you were at. You can recall information that you've annotated about that spot, and you can revisit it and know exactly what it is that you're going to deal with. I also consider this to be one of my best tools. I'm constantly looking at my logbook and picking out what I'm going to do for the day, and I use this information. There's a lot of information, and I'll cover some of the things that I like to annotate weather conditions, descriptions of the spots, things like that. This, by the way, is Bernie Fowler, and this was a stout fish. And Bernie's the one who's been diagnosed with leukemia. He's doing about as well as he can right now. Well, this is a snapshot of my logbook. Kind of wanted to give you a representation of what I keep in my logbook, just as an example. This is in my inside cover. It's just generic information. I keep boating information right around here, my hull ID number, my motors, the serial numbers if I have to get parts and that kind of thing. We used to have differentials where you had to know what the frequencies were and the ranges to plug those in. That's pretty much not anymore. Just my electronic contact information and just basic things like that. This is another page, and I just keep phone numbers of places I would fish, like Sea Hag, Salt Creek Restaurant, things like that, towboat, just information that I know where it's at. That's part of my logbook, and the logbook goes with me always. So it's just whatever it is that you want to put in there. And I use a lot of stickies, and I have stickies throughout this, and kind of have just little reminders about certain spots. On the inside cover, whenever I take a trip, an extended trip, I will print out the tide charts. And these tide charts are important, especially if you bottom fish, because they give you tidal ranges. For instance, this is a low tide of 1.2, and then it goes to a high tide of 2.2. Well, that's a 1 foot tidal change. And if you bottom fish, you understand how the tidal change or the range impacts grouper fishing, and you want to look for a time frame of high tidal change. So I always have this information, and I find it to be useful. So this is kind of a punch at a friend of mine. This is Mark Rustmeyer, the fish slayer, and it just drives home the point that if a guy like this can catch fish, you can, if a guy like that can catch fish because he's keeping good records.
Catch that fish in your boat.
My boat, that's right.
I catch it.
That's right. So that was a nice fish that was caught an octopus, and we sent the tentacles down. The tentacles moved like this, and we just hammered the grouper with the octopus. So you don't see that too often. This is an example in my logbook. My logbook is 9 years old. This is an example 9 years ago, almost 9 years ago. And it was the Swanee River. These are the kind of things that I have in my logbook that I'm going to talk about. Location was the Swanee River. I was fishing with Joe Richard at the time. We were getting ready to do a cruise to the Bahamas on that boat. I have a couple different GPSs, and I save my GPSs under different names, Garmin, or if it's a Lowrance. I'll explain the numbers there. I will write the lat longs, and then I'll give a general description here. Caught pinfish, this is where we started out. This was a bottom spot. This was better of the two, then this was even better. And I start making asterisks which stand out to me. This is how I kind of code my logbook, so I can kind of relate to the quality of the number.